Family revenge stories. How you survive when your own family becomes your worst enemy. Some wounds don't bleed, they stay quiet. They sit inside you for years, hidden beneath routine, beneath survival, beneath the version of yourself you show the world. And people think you've moved on. They think time healed you. But time doesn't heal everything. Some pain just learns how to breathe without being noticed. It changes you slowly, the way you trust, the way you love, the way you look at people who once meant everything to you. You stop expecting too much. You stop believing too easily. Not because you want to, but because you remember what it felt like when everything was taken from you without warning. And the hardest part? It's not the loss. It's the silence that comes after. The absence of apologies. The realization that the people who broke you kept living like nothing ever happened. That's when something shifts inside you. Not loudly, not all at once, just a quiet decision. That one day, somehow, the truth will matter, and maybe you won't get your past back. Maybe you won't fix what was broken, but you will become someone who never lets that kind of pain define them again. Someone stronger, colder maybe, but unbreakable. Part 1. The Weight We Carry. I want you to close your eyes for a moment and picture a man on his knees, not in prayer, not in defeat, but scrubbing a linoleum floor at 2 a.m. in a hospital corridor on the south side of Columbus, Ohio, try to hold himself together before the next shift begins. That man was me. My name is Daniel Harper. And what I'm about to tell you is not a story of suffering. It is a story of patience, and of what patience, pushed past its limit, becomes. It becomes something sharp, something precise, something that does not forgive. My father was a public school teacher at Westview Elementary in Columbus. My mother was everything else, the glue, the warmth, the last voice I wanted to hear before sleep when I was a child. They were not wealthy people. They lived in a modest 2-bedroom house on Claypool Avenue, drove used cars, and measured success in things that don't appear on any balance sheet. But they were mine, and I loved them the way you only learn to love something after you've watched it begin to fade. My father's lungs gave out first. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. The doctor at Ohio State Wexner Medical Center said it like it was just information, like it wasn't the beginning of the end of everything I had ever known as home. A slow surrender. 2, 3 years of hospital visits, oxygen tanks, and a particular kind of silence that settles in a house where someone is dying. My mother followed the same road 4 years later. A different disease. The same destination. I was there for all of it. Every appointment. Every prescription. Every night I sat beside a hospital bed and held a hand that was growing lighter by the day. I arranged the finances. I dealt with the doctors at Mount Carmel Health and later at Riverside Methodist. I washed their clothes, prepared their food, and when the time came, I bathed them, dressed them, and sat with them to the long, terrible hours of their decline. I did this because they were my parents, not because I expected anything in return. Part 2. The brother I buried before my parents. I should tell you about my brother, Marcus, older than me by 5 years. Broad-shouldered, loud-laughing, the kind of man who fills a room when he enters it and takes something from a room when he leaves. People liked him. He had a face designed for trust, warm eyes, an easy smile, the confidence of a man who has never once questioned whether he deserves what he has. Marcus had relocated to Atlanta 3 years before our father's health collapsed. He had a business, commercial real estate consulting. He called it deliberately vague. And a wife, Vanessa, who wore her ambition openly and her contempt for the rest of us quietly. They lived in a house in Buckhead with hardwood floors and a Tesla in the driveway that cost more than our parents had earned in a decade combined. And they had excuses, always excuses. We'll fly up next month. We're in the middle of a deal right now. You know how it is, Danny. You're there, you handle it. I handled it. For 6 years, I handled it. When our father needed a pulmonologist at the Cleveland Clinic who charged more than I earned in 2 months, I sold my car and took the bus. When our mother needed round-the-clock nursing care for the last 4 months of her life, I took a second job, nights at an Amazon distribution center off I-270, sleeping 4 hours a night on a good week, surviving on gas station coffee, and something I could not yet name, something that lived in my chest like an ember. keeping me warm and burning me alive at the same time. Marcus sent money twice in 6 years. Small amounts, enough to feel like charity, not enough to feel like family. And every time I called him, every time I told him things were getting worse, he said the same thing. "You're the one who's there, Danny. You know how to handle these things. I trust you." He trusted me. I turned that sentence over for years, trying to find the kindness in it. Try to believe it was something other than the most elegant way one person can abandon another. Part 3. The day the ground disappeared. My mother passed on a Tuesday in October, at Riverside Methodist Hospital in Columbus, in a room on the 4th floor with a window that faced a parking garage. I held her hand. I watched her go. I made the calls, arranged a burial at Green Lawn Cemetery, received the mourners for 3 days without sleeping. And then, when a house on Claypool Avenue was finally empty, I sat alone on the floor of her bedroom and allowed myself, for the first time in years, to simply fall apart. Marcus flew in from Atlanta for the funeral. Vanessa stood beside him in expensive black, accepting condolences with the practiced grief of someone attending a business function. They stayed 2 days. They left before the mourning period was over. Our parents had a life insurance policy, both of them, taken out years ago through a nationwide agent here in Columbus, with the quiet foresight of people who understood they would leave nothing behind but love and perhaps a small gesture to soften the blow of their absence. The combined payout was substantial, not a fortune, but enough to cover the debts I had accumulated over 6 years. Enough to let me breathe again. The policy listed both Marcus and me as joint beneficiaries. 3 weeks after my mother died, I called nationwide to begin the claims process. The claim, they told me, had already been processed. The full amount had been disbursed to a single account, to Marcus. I remember the silence on my end of that phone call. I remember the way my hands stopped working, just for a moment, as if my body understood what my mind was refusing to accept. I asked them to repeat it. They walked me through it patiently. A document had been submitted weeks earlier, signed by both beneficiaries, waiving my claim in favor of sole disbursement to the primary account holder. A document bearing my signature, a signature I had never made. I called Marcus. He didn't answer. For days later he picked up, and before I could speak, he said, in that same calm, reasonable voice I had heard my entire life, "Danny, think very carefully about what you're going to say next." Then he hung up. I was 34 years old. I had spent 6 years caring for 2 people I loved more than my own future. I had given everything, my savings, my sleep, my youth, and now I was standing in a house being prepared for sale, with debt I could not repay, holding a phone that connected me to a brother who had decided, in the cold arithmetic of his world, that I was worth nothing. I lost the house within the month. I spent 2 weeks on a friend's couch in Franklinton, then 3 months renting a room from a stranger in Hilliard, eating 1 meal a day and trying not to think about the future, because the future felt like a wall I was walking toward in the dark. But I am not most stories. Part 4. The education of a quiet man. I want to be honest about what came next, because it is not glamorous. There was no single moment of revelation, no dramatic turn. There was only a decision, made slowly in the dark over many nights, that if I could not recover what had been taken from me through grief or through the legal system, I would recover it through knowledge. I had always been good with numbers. It was the one quiet gift my father had passed down, a man who taught math for 30 years and believed, with the devotion of a convert, that numbers never lie, that if you understood the language of figures deeply enough, the truth always surfaced eventually. I enrolled in an evening accounting program at Columbus State Community College. I studied during the day and worked whatever jobs I could find at night, data entry, bookkeeping for small businesses on the east side, anything with spreadsheet. In 2 years, I had my CPA certification. In 4, a master's in forensic accounting from Ohio State, funded partly by scholarship and partly by a refusal to stop. Forensic accounting, the discipline of following money through the lies people tell about it, the science of finding what is hidden. I was very good at it. Within 5 years of that first night class at Columbus State, I was working for a boutique fraud investigation firm in downtown Columbus on North High Street, tracing embezzlement, exposing tax evasion, reconstructing financial histories that people had spent considerable effort making disappear. Every day I went to work and unwound someone else's deceptions. Every night I thought about Marcus. I was patient. That ember in my chest had not gone out. It had simply changed. It had stopped burning hot and started burning slow. And slow fire, I had learned, is far more dangerous than fast fire. Fast fire destroys and moves on. Slow fire consumes completely. I did not approach Marcus for 7 years. I let him forget me. I let him build his empire on the foundation of what he had stolen. And I watched, from a distance, quietly, the way a man watches a house he intends to enter. Part 5. The Architecture of Lies. What I found when I began looking was not surprising. It was exactly what I expected, because men like Marcus are not complicated. They are simply confident. And confidence in financial crime is almost always the thing that kills you. Marcus's commercial real estate consulting business was real on the surface. Deals were made, commissions earned, clients were genuine. But underneath that legitimate structure was something else. A secondary system running parallel to first, designed to funnel money through a series of shell LLCs registered in Delaware and Wyoming, jurisdictions chosen specifically for their minimal disclosure requirements. He had been underreporting income to the IRS for 9 years, not by small amounts. Vanessa, I discovered, was not merely a wife. She was the architect. The LLCs were registered in her maiden name, in her sister's name in Marietta, Georgia, and in the names of 2 college friends who had signed documents they likely barely read. She had a genuine talent for structure, the kind that, applied honestly, might have made her legitimately successful. Instead, it had made her invisible. And invisibility, for 9 years, had looked exactly like wealth. Then there were the properties. 4 of them, beyond their primary residence in Buckhead, 2 residential rental units in Decatur, 2 commercial storefronts in Midtown Atlanta, none declared on any federal or Georgia state tax return, all generating rental income that existed only in cash, moved in envelopes, deposited in increments carefully kept below the $10,000 Bank Secrecy Act reporting threshold, a technique called structuring, a federal crime. And then there was the insurance money, our parents' nationwide payout. I traced every dollar. Through 3 accounts, a personal Wells Fargo account in Atlanta, a business account at Truist, and a 3rd account held by one of Vanessa's Delaware LLCs, 2 wire transfers, 1 cash withdrawal at a branch in Sandy Springs, and ultimately to the renovation of the Buckhead house, the new kitchen, the extended master suite Vanessa had always wanted, our mother's last breath, our father's slow goodbye. 6 years of my life. It had bought them granite countertops and a walk-in closet. I sat with all of this for 2 weeks before I moved. I sat with it because I needed to be certain, not just legally certain, though I was entirely beyond any reasonable doubt, but personally certain. I needed to know that what I was feeling was not rage, not grief, not the desire to wound. I needed it to be something colder and more reliable than any of those things. Justice, if it means anything at all, must be administered with steady hands. Part 6. The Reckoning. I did not go to Marcus. I did not call him, write to him, or give him any warning of any kind. There is a school of thought that says a man should look his enemy in the eye before he strikes. I understand the appeal. It is satisfying in films. But I was not making a film. I was dismantling a financial empire. And you do not warn a structure before you remove its foundations. The first report went to the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. 51 pages. Documented. Cross-referenced. Bank records, corporate registration filings from Delaware and Wyoming, Georgia property records, rental payment documentation, all attached in full, filed under my firm's letterhead, in a professional capacity, as a referral from a forensic investigator who had encountered evidence of serious tax fraud in the course of unrelated work. Everything I stated was true. Everything was provable. Not one word was personal. The second report went to the Georgia Department of Revenue, a parallel filing detailing 9 years of state income tax fraud, with the same documentation. The third went to FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, outlining the structuring pattern, the systematic cash deposits designed to evade Bank Secrecy Act reporting, That is a separate federal offense, carrying its own penalties, its own timeline, its own investigators. The fourth and final filing was a civil suit brought in the Franklin County Court Common Pleas here in Columbus for the fraudulent misappropriation of joint insurance proceeds, with a forged waiver document as Exhibit A, supported by handwriting analysis from a certified forensic examiner I had retained 8 months earlier. Then I waited. The IRS moved first. They always do. A federal tax investigation is not a single event. It is a process, methodical and patient, which in some ways reminded me of myself. The audit notice arrived at Marcus's Buckhead address in late January. The formal criminal referral came 6 weeks later. By March, federal agents had executed a search warrant on his offices on Peachtree Road in Atlanta. I know this because I was watching. Not physically. I was in Columbus, in my apartment on the short north, drinking coffee and reading case updates the way other men read box scores. But I was watching. Vanessa found out about the Delaware LLCs being seized on a Wednesday morning. I have been told she did not leave their bedroom for 3 days. The Georgia revenue investigation ran parallel to the federal case, 2 separate walls closing in from 2 sides. The rental properties in Decatur and Midtown were flagged, frozen, and ultimately forfeited. The Buckhead house, the house with the kitchen renovation and the walk-in closet, was encumbered by a federal lien within 90 days of the initial IRS filing. The civil suit in Columbus settled in my favor 14 months after I filed it. The court found the signature on the insurance waiver to be fraudulent. The forensic examiner's testimony was unambiguous and awarded me the full value of my share of the policy, plus interest, plus legal costs. Marcus's attorneys attempted to negotiate. They called my lawyer twice. I did not respond either time. There was nothing to negotiate. The facts were not in dispute. The only question had ever been whether anyone with the knowledge and the will to pursue them would ever appear. I appeared. Part 7. What ruin looks like up close. People ask me sometimes, those who know the full story, whether I felt anything when it was over, whether there was satisfaction or grief or some complicated mixture of both. I tell them the truth. I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Something clean. Marcus and Vanessa lost the Buckhead house to foreclosure in the spring, 18 months after the IRS investigation began. The combined back taxes, penalties, and interest assessed against their various entities came to an amount that erased everything they had built. The Atlanta consulting business dissolved. The LLCs were administratively terminated. Vanessa's sister, whose name had appeared on 2 of the Delaware filings, retained her own attorney and cooperated fully with federal investigators. Which is to say, she told them everything they wanted to know about Vanessa's role in constructing the structure. Marcus pleaded guilty to 2 federal counts, tax evasion and structuring, in a courthouse in Atlanta on a Thursday afternoon in November. I was not present. I did not need to be. He was sentenced to 31 months at the Federal Correctional Institution in Jessup, Georgia. Vanessa received a separate sentence, 18 months, for a role in the LLC fraud at the federal prison camp in Alderson, West Virginia. They could not afford their own attorneys for the sentencing phase. They used public defenders. Think about that. Think about what it means when people who spend a decade carefully building the architecture will find themselves, at the end, unable to pay for the lawyers who might have saved them. That is not irony. That is precision. Their daughter. They had a daughter, 8 years old, a child who did not choose any of this, went to live with Vanessa's mother in Marietta during the period of incarceration. I do not include this as a point of satisfaction. I include it because it is part of the truth, and the truth, all of it, is what I owe you if I'm going to tell this story at all. The child is innocent. She always was. The weight of what her parents built will be hers to carry in ways neither she nor I can fully predict, and I am sorry for that. Genuinely, completely sorry. In a way, I am not sorry for anything else about what I did. Part 8. What was never about the money. I want to be precise about something, because it matters. This was never about the insurance payout. I know that sounds like something a person says to sound noble. So let me explain what I mean. The money, my share of our parents' nationwide policy, was real, and the theft of it was real, and the civil judgment that recovered it was real and right and necessary. I am not dismissing the money. But if it had only ever been about the money, I would have pursued that civil suit alone, years earlier, and let Marcus keep his business and his house, and his freedom in exchange for a check. I had the evidence for the forged signature within 18 months of the theft. I could have moved then. I waited. I waited because what Marcus and Vanessa had done was not a single crime committed in a moment of weakness. It was a way of living. It was a decade-long choice to take what they wanted and call it deserve, to look at the people around them, at the rules, at the law, at me, and decide that none of it applied to them. I wanted to dismantle that. Not punish it, dismantle it. Remove it from the world the way you remove something structurally dangerous. Not with anger, with evidence, with process, with the kind of thoroughness that leaves nothing standing and nowhere to rebuild. My father used to say that mathematics is the only honest language because it cannot be persuaded. 2 plus 2 does not become 5 because you want it to, or because you're charming, or because you have a good attorney. Numbers simply are what they are, and they wait, patient and indifferent, for the person with the knowledge to read them correctly. I became that person, not for the money, for my father, who taught me that the truth has a structure, and that structure can always be found. For my mother, who held on through 4 years of illness in a house on Claypool Avenue while her older son sent apologies by text and her younger son slept 4 hours a night, trying to keep the lights on. For the version of myself that scrubbed that hospital floor in Columbus at 2 in the morning and did not break. I did this for him most of all. Epilogue. After, I still live in Columbus. I own a house now, not on Claypool Avenue, but close on the west side, with a small yard and a porch where I drink my coffee in the mornings before work. It is nothing dramatic. It is everything I need. I still work in forensic accounting. I have my own practice now. 3 employees, an office on North 4th Street, a reputation in the city that I built by being the kind of person who does not let go of a thing until it is fully understood. My clients are companies, law firms, government agencies, people who need someone to follow money through the dark and bring back the truth. I am good at this. I am, perhaps, the best version of myself that I could have become, and I arrived here by a road I would not wish on anyone. I have not spoken to Marcus since the day he hung up the phone. I do not intend to. There is a difference between forgiveness, which is a private transaction between a person and their own peace, and reconciliation, which requires that the other person has become someone worth reconciling with. I have achieved the first. The second is not available. My parents' graves are at Green Lawn Cemetery, 3 miles from where I grew up. I go on their birthdays and on the anniversary of each of their deaths. I bring flowers. My mother liked daisies, my father, inexplicably, preferred carnations, and I sit for a while and tell them what is happening in my life. I told my father about the IRS case the spring after the sentencing. I sat beside his headstone in the April sun and told him the whole thing, start to finish, the way I used to tell him about problems at school. I told him about the Delaware LLCs and the structuring charges and the federal lien on the Buckhead house. I told him about the civil judgment in Franklin County. I told him that the numbers had told the truth, exactly the way he always said they would. The wind moved through the cemetery trees, and the morning was quiet, and I sat there for a long time before I got up and drove back to the city. There is nothing more to say about Marcus. There is nothing more to say about the money, or the forgery, or the years it cost me. There is only this: I am still here. I kept the thing in my chest burning slow and steady until the work was done. And when it was done, I let it go, not because Marcus deserved my peace, but because I did. The numbers never lie. They only wait for someone patient enough to read them. Daniel Harper, Columbus, Ohio,